And at number 10, Batman Dracula. Some of the coolest stories involve Batman, and I mean, let's be honest, Batman himself is one of the coolest heroes. He's also the most human, literally just being a regular human who fights among gods and aliens against some of the biggest threats to humanity, including vampires. And when he goes up against the baddest and biggest vampire, Dracula himself, Batman becomes more than a man. He becomes the most justice-driven, terrifying vampire you've ever seen, and it is dope. When Dracula comes to Gotham, a good vampire grants Batman the vampiric gift in order to take on Dracula himself, and the idea was so awesome that it became a whole trilogy, starting with Red Rain, then Bloodstorm, and ending in Crimson Mist, all of which put the most obvious hero to become a vampire in one of the best Victorian horror styles and with the most terrifying looks I have ever seen for The Dark Knight. Batman Dracula is truly one of the best versions of Batman ever, and 'tis all thanks to Elseworlds. Number 9, Justice Riders. You know what sells? Cowboys, baby. Taking your characters and plopping them in a western setting is always a guaranteed money-making tactic. Sure, it's been done a million times, but in 1997, DC released Justice Riders, or in other words, a western Justice League composed of hootin' and hollerin' versions of Wonder Woman, Hawkman, Kid Flash, Martian Manhunter, Booster Gold, and Blue Beetle, which is just the weirdest arrangement for a Justice League ever, but it's so cool. It's just wild. Obviously, to make the setting work, all the abilities of these heroes are turned way down. But in place of that, we got a quick drawing Martian Manhunter in a poncho and a big old hat, and Blue Beetle as a wacky scientist. It's super cool. With all the style you might expect, the story is just as wild as the Wild West it takes place in. It follows Sheriff Diana Prince as she puts together this team of heroes to take on Maxwell Lord, who left her town as a smoking stack of ruins. It's just a fun time and absolutely deserves a read from you. Number 8. Green Lantern Earth 1. This Green Lantern focused story is one that I actually really like. It brushes over a lot of things very easily, but it made me care about the Green Lanterns, and that's something I didn't think was gonna happen. I don't really care about them normally, but in this one I do. It almost feels like a dark sci-fi take on Hal Jordan and the Green Lanterns. Essentially, in this story, Hal Jordan is on the moon with a crew of workers who mine for metal when he comes across a crashed alien ship containing the Green Lantern ring, a Green Lantern battery, the corpse of Abin Sur, and a robot called a Manhunter. Hal claimed the ring, just taking it off the alien corpse, and used it to fight the Manhunter that sprung on him. What had happened is that the Manhunter robots were created by the Guardians of the Universe to take out the Green Lanterns as the Lanterns had grown uncontrollable, and they were pretty successful, but also grew out of control, putting the galaxy in peril and leaving the Green Lantern core broken and spread extremely thin. Hal meets up with an equally inexperienced Kilowag, and they go across the universe trying to rally together any Green Lanterns they can. The best way I saw it described was as if Christopher Nolan and Ridley Scott teamed up and made a Green Lantern story. It feels like that, and it's just such a cool and fresh story. You should definitely check it out. Hey you nerds! I hope you're enjoying this video, but if you are, make sure you hit the like button so that we know that this is what you want to see and we can make more of it. Cool? Okay, cool. Moving on. Number 7, Justice League The Nail. This one is rather odd. It's kind of a Superman story, but without Superman. The premise is that the day that Kal-El crashed on Earth, the Kents drove over a nail and it gave them a flat tire, resulting in Superman just never becoming a thing. And it's all based off a little poem. The poem goes like this: For want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For want of a horse, the rider was lost. For want of a rider, the message was lost. For want of a message, the battle was lost. And for want of a battle, the kingdom was lost. And all for the want of a nail. So essentially it's all about the butterfly effect, which is kind of what Elseworlds is all about in the first place when you really think about it. Wow, look at that, so cool. So, in this story, all the other heroes are here, but without that one central figure to embody their core values. Without that main leader, the world actually fears the Justice League. The world is constantly standing against them, and the story shows how they struggle with not only the villains of the DC universe, but even their own public perception, and it's all because Superman is out of the picture. As much as it feels like a big testament to Superman's importance, it does also show the strength of the other members of the League to a degree, which is nice because Superman is just kind of boring. Number 6, Luthor. But do you know what isn't boring? Lex Luthor's view of Superman, and that's what leads me to our next pick. Luthor is a brilliant inversion of the normal Superman story we are all used to. In this story, we get to see Metropolis, Superman, and the rest of the world through the eyes of Lex Luthor. And from his point of view, Superman is utterly terrifying. He's a menace that could destroy the world and the world Luthor has built beneath his burning alien gaze. It flips the whole thing on its head, and while it's relatively short, it does a lot in that small time, showing us the lengths to which Lex Luthor is willing to go to achieve his ideals, but it also tells pretty plainly why he would go to those lengths in the first place. This comic inspired the insanely good Joker story that is this one's spiritual successor, and for that alone, it definitely deserves praise. It's just nice to see a story from a perspective different to the everyday superhero story. Coming in at number 5 is Gotham by Gaslight. Gotham by Gaslight, like most Elseworlds stories, is just super freaking cool. It's such an obvious, brilliant concept. You take Batman, the greatest detective ever, and you plop him in the Victorian era and have him take on one of the most compelling unsolved serial killer cases in history, Jack the Ripper. But then, they go and make it even cooler by having Jack move to this really awesome Victorian Gotham City, and they give Batman and the Ripper a personal connection. The story even sees Bruce accused of being the killer himself, which adds yet another layer on top of everything else. Also, we have to talk about the incredibly cool art style in the comic, which came from Mike Mignola, who created Hellboy, and it just works perfectly in this Victorian setting. It's actually just a big old treat to read. Gotham by Gaslight was one of DC's most successful Elseworlds stories, and it even got a 2018 animated adaptation, but it has a completely different ending. Both versions are really cool and really entertaining, so just pick one. Number 4, Superman Red Sun. Probably one of the most beloved Superman stories ever. This story asks the question of what would happen if Kal-El had landed not in Kansas, but in the Soviet Union. Superman grows under the ideals of communism and is used by the Soviets as their weapon, helping bring almost the whole world into a super Soviet Union. It sees other heroic characters like Wonder Woman and Batman in this completely different world and really plays with the idea of freedom over security. It paints this Superman in a much darker light, as he will go to incredibly surprising lengths to achieve his goal of Soviet domination. He goes up against a Lex Luthor who becomes president of the United States, has Brainiac as a supercomputer assistant who eventually turns on him, and the end of the whole story? It's a truly mind-boggling experience to say the least. Also, just like Gotham by Gaslight, in 2020 we got an animated version of this story as well, and it's incredible. Oh, and fun fact, Superman Red Sun is real-life Superman Henry Cavill's favorite Superman story, which is really interesting. Like, could you imagine a Henry Cavill Superman Red Sun live action movie? Number 3, Kingdom Come. While a lot of the great Elseworlds stories deal with versions of specific characters, others deal with the whole DC universe of heroes and villains, and Kingdom Come is probably one of the best of them. Here, the classic heroes who made up the Justice League, they've all basically retired. New heroes have sprung up in their place, but they don't hold a candle to those who came before. They barely even care about saving people and cause a massive accident that takes out almost all of the Midwest of America. Superman has been convinced that the world wanted him to step down. Batman keeps Gotham in control using massive, powerful robots. Green Lantern sits in an emerald fortress above the earth just watching. The Flash has basically become the Speed Force and keeps his city safe by basically being everywhere all at once, existing in the time between seconds. It's almost as if the Justice League had retired and then all the corrupt heroes from the boys took their place, and then the retired heroes come back to correct everything. There's a lot more to it than that, with some really cool stuff going on in all different kinds of places. Kingdom Come is like a love letter to DC Comics by DC Comics, and it has some of the most beautiful comic book art you've ever seen. Coming in at number 2 is The Dark Knight Returns. Technically speaking, Elseworlds stories simply have to take place outside the normal DC continuity for them to count as Elseworlds stories, or they have to have that little watermark thing on it, but I'm changing the rules here. Which means that Frank Miller's globally appraised The Dark Knight Returns is an Elseworlds story, and that makes it one of the best ones. Set in the 80s, it actually tells the tale of an old, grizzled, militaristic Batman who comes out of retirement in the face of an American government that has become more and more dictatorial. He takes on a new Robin, he faces off against an old sadistic Joker, and Bats beats the absolute snot out of Superman in one of the most famous comic book fights ever. The unique style of of the comic also just adds another layer to this work of art. Sure, the books that followed were kind of horrible in my opinion in comparison and extremely odd, but the one that came first has a special place in so many people's hearts, and for good reason. And finally, in at number 1, The New Frontier. Most Elseworlds stories give us a world with some radical difference, usually that leaves the world worse for wear. Usually the horror of those worlds gives justifications for why heroes must become stronger, go to greater lengths, or show the fullest extent of their might in ways impossible when restricted by the regular DC canon. But in The New Frontier, we get a world that challenges the heroes to do good in a moral sense, to reach the fullest extent of their hopes and ideals rather than their physical limits, and all without losing track of what makes a story just so freaking good. It's a story about heroes who are worthy of being called that, who inhabit a world that wants so desperately to change for the better. It depicts the DC universe during a post-Korean War era with superheroes outlawed by the government. It's also the beginning of the space age, which leads to the story being told from the perspectives of Hal Jordan and Martian Manhunter. Fans of Elseworlds think of this one as the most perfect. Each subplot is just as unique as the main story, and the characters are all fully realized with different arcs. It also gives a beautiful theme. The story is just about leaving behind a dark past and looking to the bright future. And like all the other great Elseworlds, there's also a movie, so you don't really have to actually read anything, which is always a good time.
Number 10, Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Batman Hush. I actually really love this story, but it's also kinda out there, especially when you consider it has its own sort of theme song and a very creepy tone. In Tales from the Dark Multiverse Hush, Bruce Wayne is the one who becomes a version of the Hush character. It would be more accurate though to say that he becomes a version of Hush and Batman if they were kinda like combined together. Here, Thomas Elliot instead becomes the rich billionaire playboy and also corrupt senator, allying himself with Talia al Ghul. He manages to make it so that Bruce was locked away in Arkham Asylum. Despite feeling slightly guilty about doing this to his childhood friend, overall Elliot is pretty okay with the way Bruce is imprisoned and treated there. However, after faking his death, Bruce Wayne manages to escape Arkham and becomes Elliot's worst nightmare. And just for a fun fact, he doesn't go by Hush in this one though, he's the Silenced. Shh. Get it? Still like Hush. Number 9, JLA the Nail. This is an Elseworlds story that centers around a literal nail. The nail in question is one that punches Martha and Jonathan Kent's tire, thereby preventing them from intercepting and adopting little baby Kal-El, who would grow up to become Superman. Or at least he would have grown up to become Superman if that's what happened. In this world, instead, there is seemingly no Superman. As such, Lex Luthor is successful in making the JLA a band of outlaws. Instead of them being celebrated heroes, they're kind of considered to be somewhat criminal, despite of course their noble intentions. What I will say is at least a lot of this artwork is pretty good. Most of the limited series ends up being kinda dull, save for a few scenes and plot points. The parts that I found the most interesting were one where Selina gets therapy while sexy posing on a desk, another being a fight involving Joker with anti-grav mitts versus Batman, which takes place after Joker has successfully killed Batgirl and Robin. Batman ends up broken as a result of the Joker's actions here. We later learn that the Superman of this universe is basically a very sensitive Jimmy Olsen who is bonded with the remaining traces of Kal-El's DNA found in this crash-landed spaceship. Jimmy doesn't like it when people laugh at him. He ends up in a fight with the real Kal-El, another interesting part of the 3-issue series, who it turns out was adopted by the Amish, hence why he never became a hero, as he preferred to stay within his community. So we get an Amish Superman, and then we also get Jimmy Olsen Superman, but he's pretty much evil. Also, what is that costume he's wearing? Sorry Jimmy, I didn't mean to laugh at you. Sorry. Alright friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want even more multiversal tales, let us know that you love it by giving this video a thumbs up. And also let us know in the comments what other multiversal tales you have loved or you have thought are super weird, or that you loved and thought were weird. I mean, they don't have to be mutually exclusive. Number 8, Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Wonder Woman, War of the Gods. I don't even know what to really make of this multiversal story. All I can tell you is buckle in because this dark multiverse story is Yeah, dark. To be fair to this one-shot though, I don't really even know what to make of the War of the Gods story in the main continuity, which I also found a little confusing, so it makes sense that this is where I would be as well with the Dark Multiverse version. A little confused. In this story, the Amazons of Themyscira end up in a war with the United States. When Diana is pulled into a battle with Hecate as a result of these events, where in the main continuity Hecate was defeated by Wonder Woman's lasso of truth, here she just ends up planting a seed within Diana's mind. Diana defeats her, but only temporarily. Following the death of Hippolyta, her mother, Diana is left weak, fearful, alone, and resentful, and this is when Hecate is able to take over. Unable to free her, all of Wonder Woman's friends die trying to. The only way to contain Hecate Wonder Woman is with magic, and many of her magical colleagues actually die in the attempt to do so. Hecate as such ends up chained, but of course so is Diana, unable to find the hope to escape her own internal prison. Of course, like most dark multiversal tales, we end on a pretty dark and tragic note. But that's okay, Zatanna's never gonna give up! Number 7. JLA Act of God. Admittedly, this is a cool premise, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense, which is what's weird about it. In JLA Act of God, an Elseworlds 3-issue miniseries, we get to explore a world where all the heroes of Earth have simultaneously lost their powers. Well, at least almost all of them anyways. How did this happen? Black light? Somehow the world being hit with a flash of black light results in almost everyone losing their powers. I guess normally superheroes don't go to raves or anything, where black light is, I feel like, very common. Although this is attributed to the black light, some might call it an act of God. A later on, very suddenly, devoutly Christian Diana Prince at least would probably claim that. Diana, haven't you met gods? How does that make sense? What's really ridiculous is in the first issue, as we go through the moment this happened, the world over, we get to see just how diverse not only everyone's powers are, but also when it comes to the source of their powers, just how diverse it is. In one page we go from Steel losing complete control of his systems and suit as he plummets to his doom, to Aquaman losing his ability to connect with the creatures of the sea telepathically and his ability to breathe underwater. At the same time, Kyle Rayner also has lost control of his Green Lantern ring, which seems to now just be, I guess, a really unique and trendy looking accessory. How could a flash of black light affect almost everyone in this same way? Like I said, it's a cool premise, kinda wonky execution though. How is Steel affected by this? Didn't Steel make his suit? I'm confused. Number 6. Facets. What happens when we get to see the Teen Titans as they'd be in a fantasy setting? Well, a whole lot of weirdness. Raven of course ends up evil, known as a deadly and beautiful sorceress, Queen Raven. She creates her own loyal servant and accomplice with Victor Stone, or at least she tries to, transforming him permanently into a cyborg. It turns out this isn't all that Raven's been up to though. She has a whole collection of prisoners whom she has transformed in some way, and when Cyborg refuses to join her, she also contemplates holding him there with the rest of them. So apparently she does this a lot. Seems like her deals with people don't usually work out. I guess she's just hoping that one day that'll change. She's like, I'll just keep doing it, eventually someone will be loyal to me. If I try it enough times, it's gotta work. In this story, Coriander is a prisoner of some goblin mages who use cosmic energy to transform her into Starfire. The comic features an all-out battle between Raven and Starfire, joined of course by the rest of the Titans. Nightwing goes on a trip inside Phantasm's cloak, literally looks like he's tripping out, and eventually Trigon joins the party when he is summoned by his daughter Raven. You can check it all out in the 1994 New Titans Annual. It's weird. It's definitely weird. Also, some of these outfits are interesting. Number 5. Superman at Earth's End. I don't even know where to begin with this comic. Oh boy. Okay, so Superman here is one of the first iterations of course, the old man heroes to come that we've come to love so much. See, before there was Old Man Logan, there was Old Man Supes. In this Elseworlds story, we are in a post-apocalyptic future where machines rule supreme and mutants basically run amok. Also, there is an army of Batmen and vicious biker gangs because, I mean, why not? The year I believe is 2102. So possibly this is what we'll be dealing with in just over 80 years time. Honestly, the way things are going, I could maybe see that being our future. Superman is recharging and recuperating his strength when he hears about the plan to nuke Gotham City. He aims to save the city, but of course without doing any killing, because you know, he's Superman. And of course, no guns, because he's Superman. Except for the part where he uses guns to kill people. Except for that part. Mostly robo and really bad people though, so I guess for Supes it doesn't count. It features the famous "I am a man" memeable moment, which actually was shouted in response to an android, by the way, so out of context it's really weird, but within context it actually like kinda makes some sense. It's still pretty weird, but it's not as weird. Also, shortly after claiming that he doesn't need weapons, Superman chooses to wield a ridiculous megagun known as the Expanger. It's crazy. I just love that he's like, I don't need weapons because I have powers. I would never do that. And then like flip to like 2 pages later and he's like, look at this giant expunger. I'm gonna use this mega gun. Number 4, All-Star Batman and Robin. Not so much a story as a full series, but I have other full series on this list, so it's fine. All-Star Batman and Robin consists of 10 issues, all of which are pretty weird when it comes to the depiction and characterization of a lot of our favorite superheroes, villains, and their allies even. Once again, we get a super jacked version of Joker in this comic. We also get a version of Vicky Vale who seems far more obsessed with Superman's manhood and dates with Bruce Wayne than any kind of serious reporting. And of course, then there are Batman and Robin. What a dynamic. Batman in this comic is the worst kind of hero, an entitled one. This is the version who refers to himself as the goddamn Batman and makes Dick eat rats and sleep in the Batcave initially. Because he's Batman and he can do that. He also torments Hal Jordan Green Lantern by painting himself, Robin, and the entire room and corridor yellow, and also serves and consumes yellow food and drink around him, with Batman enjoying some lemonade and Robin devouring what appears to be an all yellow ice cream cone. All-Star Batman and Robin has to be one of the weirdest multiverses out there. And every time I go back to it, I'm like, what is happening? What is this characterization? Number 3, JLA created equal. Okay, so All-Star Batman and Robin is the not so great kind of weird, but JLA created equal is just the weird kind of weird. In this 2-part Elseworlds story, we get a glimpse into a world where all the men, or almost all the men, were killed off by an unexpected and sudden plague. The only 2 left alive are Superman and Lex Luthor in this reality, and yet for all the powerful women who remain, this book sure manages to still be about the male characters within it. In Created Equal, Superman attempts to help the rest of the new, almost all-female JLA figure out a way to repopulate the Earth. I say almost because Superman's still there, so yeah. The main concern is how to ensure the survival of the human male gender, as if they made clones with their technology and resources, they'd actually only be able to produce female ones. I guess they can't like tamper with the genes, they can't like tamper with the DNA, or I don't know how you make clones anyway, so I probably shouldn't tell other people how to do it. Eventually, Lois Lane and Clark Kent end up conceiving a son who is born and named Adam. He accidentally hugs his mother to death, and then Lex, being Lex, unleashes a plan to take control of all the young men who were created and raised on Themyscira, thanks to Adam's existence and his resilience. Also, he makes them all bald, because this is Lex Luthor, so yeah. Oh, what a weird story. Come and join me, and also I'll be bald, because you all have lovely hair and it offends me. Number 2, a Batman Reptilian. Ah yes, the story of an alien baby that belongs to Killer Croc because he was influenced by aliens while inside his mother's womb, which is how he's even mutated and also makes him like, I guess, a hybrid alien-human creation technically. In this beautiful yet bizarre story, Batman is attempting to track down whoever is killing all of his rogues. What he finds out though is that it isn't any one of the other villains, but Croc's baby that he just gave birth to. Killer Croc of course didn't know that he could do that. I mean, neither did we. It turns out that this is a result of him being part alien in origin, or being tampered with by aliens when he was like a fetus. The newborn babe, it turns out, just wants its mama, but for what purpose remains to be seen. Killer Croc can't nurture it, as you know, he doesn't have like the biological equipment for that. After we get through that whole slog of that's not gonna work, it's also implied that the giant alien monster baby wants Croc to mate with it. which is also thankfully out of the question when it comes to Croc's willingness, so thank goodness, because I thought this better not be where this is going, oh my goodness. Did I mention that Batman is also a huge jerk throughout this entire series? Cause yeah, this is Garth Ennis behind the writing wheel, and that is very much a thing. Which I'm not surprised by. That's kind of Ennis' whole thing, so yeah. I actually like Batman being a butt in that story more than I like him being a butt in Frank Miller's All-Star, so yeah. Number 1. Batman Last Night on Earth. This one was where the thumb came from in part 1 of this list. I had intended to actually include this story there, but then I got distracted by the Batman and Lobo crossover. Understandably so, I think, because that's also super weird. But that's fine, because it just means that Last Night on Earth gets a higher spot on this list of bizarre multiversal DC stories. Batman Last Night on Earth is a book that exists outside of the continuity and belongs to the DC Black Label line. Also, Reptilian is part of that same line, just so you know. Black Label primarily is made up of titles that are more adult in terms of their content and their themes. Here, that translates to Batman wearing a straitjacket version of his suit in a post-apocalyptic future, where Joker is just a head in a jar. They also end up fighting giant monster baby Green Lantern constructs in issue number 1, just to give you a sense of the level of weird that we're dealing with here. But it's like a fun weird. It's like a, I'd recommend this weird. I give it 2 weird thumbs up. Number 10. Speeding Bullets. Basically a multiversal DC Elseworlds story that answers the question, what if Superman didn't just have powers but was also rich? That's basically what is going on here in Speeding Bullets. In this story, Superman wasn't raised by the Kents, but instead was taken in and adopted by the Waynes, and he becomes, you guessed it, Bruce Wayne. After the death of Thomas and Martha, Bruce becomes Batman, but the difference is this version of Batman has tech, money, smarts, and superpowers. Lex also becomes a mess of a villain in this world. While still being Superman's nemesis, he's also Batman's nemesis rolled into one, with an extra little dash of Penguin, just for good measure, I guess. So here we get a villain who is Lex, Joker, and the Penguin all in one. Oh goody. Just what none of us necessarily wanted or needed. And yet, we got it. This also doesn't do much to enhance his motivation for villainy, which, like his identity, is also kind of all over the place. Still, the premise behind this Elseworlds story is pretty cool, but unfortunately it doesn't add enough when it comes to offering a twist or different perspective to either the Superman or Batman mantle. Number 9. Batman and Captain America. A gloriously weird and awesome comic. This DC multiversal story also happens to be a DC Marvel crossover issue featuring Batman, his sidekick Robin, and Captain America and his sidekick Bucky. Both Cap and Batman end up joining together and then swapping sidekicks. Their villains also seem to have a team up as Red Skull and Joker come together, but this is also the famous issue that Joker insists that Red Skull is too evil even for him. He may be a criminal lunatic, but after all, he's an American criminal lunatic, and he can't stand by when it comes to abiding by Red Skull's history and motivations. So not only do we get to see some great team-ups, but we also get to see a full-out fight break out between these two iconic villains. Thanks, John Byrne. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you love Elseworld stories and all of the weird, wacky things that go on in the multiverse when it comes to just alternate worlds, let us know by giving this video a thumbs up, and hey, maybe we can do some more Elseworlds lists for you. Cause yeah, there's lots of kooky stories out there. Number 8. The Superman monster. Frankenstein, but make it Superman. There are lots of retellings of classic tales when we look into the realm of Elseworlds, and the story of Frankenstein is not one that is left untouched. Actually, I feel like this story gets interpreted a few times throughout the Elseworlds stories. I feel like I've seen at least 3 different versions of Frankenstein retold in Elseworlds. I still have yet to see Dr. Seuss retellings though in the world of DC, which are some classic kids tales that do eke their way surprisingly into Marvel at times. In the Superman monster, Lex Luthor takes the role of creator and Superman ends up as his monster. You might think this sounds familiar considering it's also kind of the premise for the main continuity origin story of Bizarro, but this creation, while starting out similar to Bizarro, eventually goes full-on hero and full-on Superman by the end of it. That means in this story of Frankenstein, the creator ends up the monster, while the monster ends up the hero. What a twist. Number 7. Justice Riders. Because it's an inevitability that at some point we have to turn to the Wild West for inspiration when it comes to an Elseworld story. We We've got to go there at some point. And so we have Justice Riders. Justice Riders reimagines the DC universe as existing during the time of the Wild West and adapts the characters to kind of fit their surroundings somewhat. As such, Wonder Woman becomes a Texan-sounding sheriff, and Martian Manhunter gets to sport a poncho and a cowboy hat. Which honestly, this is one you might want to check out just for that, because that's great. This is the Wild West, baby. There are also plenty of shootouts and bar brawls, some with cyborg enemies involved. As ridiculous as this premise is, I will say it's executed well and it also looks fantastic, so. Number 6, The Reaching Hand. Honestly, what a strange story this one is. It features Batman as an occult detective trying to solve the mystery of Elongated Man's death. Unfortunately, it seems as though Elongated Man wasn't alone in his body, and there was a force of darkness within him who continues to seek to spread gloom and doom wherever it can. This story features a lot of restless nights for Bruce as well, and unfortunately, he ends up too late to save Jimmy Olsen. Not Jimmy Olsen, who ends up brutally murdered by Swirly. At least that's what it looks like to me. He's just head down in the toilet and they're like, he's been murdered. Or he was just being mistreated by the other staff at his workplace, but no, he's dead. Death by Swirly. Bruce also is too late to save his friends or Gotham in the end. At least that's what's implied. This one ends pretty bleakly, so yeah. Also, this is back from when we had like Elseworlds, like giant sizes, so there would be like a bunch of short stories in there. Kinda like What If, and I like that style. More stories though than What If, because those are normally 2. Sometimes only 1. Number 5, Elseworlds' finest, Supergirl/Batgirl. You can't go wrong with a jacked Joker when it comes to weird multiversal stories. Looking real jacked, baby! Elseworlds' finest is weird but also kind of cool. It focuses on Barbara Gordon and Kara Zor-El, Batgirl and Supergirl respectively, who are guardians of Gotham and Metropolis, as in this world, there was never a Batman or a Superman. The two of them team up to take on the manipulative and traitorous Lex Luthor, and as I said, a really swole version of the Joker. It's a strange one, but it's also kind of a great one. Number 4, Batman/the Demon, a tragedy. In this Elseworlds story, we get to explore a horrifying fantastical world where magic exists. Here, Bruce Wayne is not the Batman, instead suffering from an allergy to moonlight. He is a restless sleeper, and it turns out this is because he's actually bonded to the demon Etrigan. Oh my goodness. It takes Bruce a while to figure this out though, but in the end, he is too late to save his girlfriend Glenda. Poor Glenda. The best thing he can do according to Merlin is to wipe his memory, which will also mean he has no recollection of Glenda. Oh no. Merlin claims that this will save her. Unfortunately, it doesn't, as Etrigan taking over Bruce in the nighttime does end up still killing her. But hey, at least Bruce doesn't remember her, which actually seems to have been Merlin's plan all along. You see, in order to keep the demon trapped within Bruce, his forgetfulness is necessary. There is no way to save Glenda really in any case, most likely, and Merlin was just saying that to try to get Bruce to, do what he wanted him to do. But hey, at least Bruce doesn't remember her, so at least he won't be sad about it. Number 3, Brotherhood of the Bat. Have you ever wondered to yourself what the DC universe would be like if every member of the League of Assassins was dressed up and also weirdly happened to resemble Batman? No? Me neither. But too bad, because we get to know what that would be like in this Elseworlds story. I mean, not even too bad, it's kind of really great in a weird way. Brotherhood of the Bat takes place in a post-apocalyptic future where Ra's al Ghul decides that the League of Assassins, they need some new costumes. New Bat-themed costumes that all very much resemble alternative takes on Batman's outfits. Also, check out some of the notes on Ra's al Ghul's design sketches here. That is honestly my favorite part of this story. Just seeing all these, like there's like little notes in red. It's like, is this cape too much? You can never have too much cape, just so you know. Just so you know, Raish, no such thing. Number 2, Batman Nosferatu. If you want something weird in a sort of horror-based and very artistic way, we've got you. Batman Nosferatu is actually part of an Elseworlds story series that delve into the German Expressionist period. This story seems to take some inspiration from Nosferatu and the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Not only is the art style very different and unique, but the whole tone and the style of the dialogue is as well. well. The story has a lot going on, but mainly it follows the horrors of Dr. Arkham. To give you like the briefest summary ever, because as I said, there's a lot going on in this story, it's also quite long. The story mainly centers around Dr. Arkham and his experiments and creations, including one called the Laughing Man. Oh, I wonder who that's supposed to be. A reanimated creature made from various corpse parts. In the end, Bruce Wayne's son ends up dying and is resurrected as the Nosferatu, sort of cyborg monster creature who ends up taking on and defeating the Laughing Man. I wonder who Nosferatu is supposed to stand for here. Any guesses? Number 1. Batman/Lobo. Like all of the weirdest comic stories out there across the multiverse, this one also features Lobo. Here, Joker hires the mercenary to ruin Batman's reputation and then finally kill his nemesis. Lobo sets out dressed as Batman and begins to muck up the streets, killing Batman's villains in gruesome ways to make sure that people know that Batman is no hero. He's like, what, does Batman have a no-kill policy? Pfft, not anymore. Also, the deaths have to be gruesome because this is a Lobo comic after all, so yeah, they're all pretty... there's something. I don't even know if we can show them here. In the end, the Joker is forced to call off Lobo after it's revealed that Batman is actually his long-lost twin brother, Bruce Wayne. You see, Joey and Bruce were apparently separated at a young age. I mean, does it get any weirder than this? Number 10. Recon. I just love how short and yet massive this story is. It helps to tie together some of the events we've seen out in space and features Green Lantern Hal Jordan recounting everything he has seen. His mission is to try and reach the fellow Green Lanterns and get the message to the Green Lantern Corps about all of the chaos out in the galaxy. As he describes it, everything the Corps sacrificed to give the universe peace and security, it's all coming apart. The art by Dexter Soy also lends to this desperate sense of urgency in the story. You can feel it in the line work. When Hal arrives at his destination, he realizes he's too late, but there is still one surprise left waiting around the corner for him. Oh, I forgot to mention who wrote it. But yeah, because I didn't include those in the script, here is the colorist and the writer for that one. Number 9. Time and Effect. While some were disappointed by the promise of the main story of Future State Superman Worlds of War, especially in issue number 1, there is a side story in there that you can still be sure to enjoy. And that's the new Mr. Miracle story, Shiloh Norman. At least I believe that's his name. Time and Effect, which also takes place on Warworld. Although we don't see Clark in this story, he is mentioned in it. And we do get to see Midnighter in it, so there's that. The events of the story also even come with a note about when it takes place in continuity. Thanks, Associate Editor Brittany Holzer. Appreciate notes like that. Time and Effect is written by Brandon Easton with art by Valentine Delandro and colors by Marissa Louise. And before we move on to this next spot, just a quick reminder to give this video a thumbs up if you're enjoying it. It really does help us out here at the channel. Number 8, The Book of Guy. As action-packed and nail-biting as the main story in Future State Green Lantern is, there are a few that I just find more interesting. I'm sorry, I said it. I love Jon Stewart though. They tend to dive into what some of your other favorite lanterns were up to when everything went dark, or have been up to since then. One of those lanterns that we get to pop in on is Guy Gardner, who happens to be trying to talk aliens out of fighting one another when his ring stops working. Unable to understand them anymore, Guy finds himself stranded and kinda has to learn their alien language the hard way by trial and error and pointing and all the things, as opposed to relying on the power of his ring. He ends up becoming the revered prophet during his 5-year-long stay, and yeah, the story is just really hilarious. A nice bit of humor amidst the rest of the book and world of Green Lanterns, which in Future State is all pretty dark. I mean, definitely dark in terms of powers, because we don't have those right now. Number 7, Gotham City Sirens Ladies Night Out. I mean, you know I can't resist a good supervillain team-up story, especially when our villains are banding together to still act bad, but for the sake of saving others. I love it. Sometimes you have to be a little bad to be good, you know what I mean? And that's usually the case with Gotham City Sirens, this story being no exception. Gotham City Sirens is written by Paula Sevenbergen and Rob Haynes, with art by Emanuela Lupacino and Wade Vaughn Grawbadger, and colors by John Cleese. Here we see Poison Ivy and Catwoman team up in an effort to expose tech mogul Dax Dilton, helping to end the Magistrate's reign and strengthen the resistance. They ally themselves with Dee Dee, Dilton's latest invention, the domestic droid. Get it? DD? Offering her a real girls' night out in exchange for her damning intel on Dilton. Give it up, lady. Made it sound like it's like some sort of they kidnapped her. She wanted to go. They became friends. It was all good. Number 6, the taking of Sector 0123. Once again, not to say that the main story is bad or anything like that, but I just like this whole story a lot better in comparison. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree, or if you liked the main story better in Green Lantern. The Taking of Sector 0123 is a story centered around Green Lantern Jessica Cruz, who in the wake of losing her powers was left stranded on a Green Lantern base. Now, this base is solid and technological, not a construct, so fortunately, she still has her base after everything went dark, but she is left to defend it and keep it operational all on her own, which proves especially terrifying when 3 Yellow Lanterns show up. Without her powers, Jessica must rely on her willpower and training alone to defend herself and the station. The Taking of Sector 0123 is written by Ryan Caddy with art by Sam Basri and colors by Hi-Fi. Number 5, Prophetess. As much as I actually enjoy the main story here, the Justice League story, Justice League Dark seems to have come out on top in comparison with their story, Prophetess. This story is the side story featured in Future State Justice League and gives us a version of the future where our magical team has disbanded and now must be brought back together in order to save more than just the world. The team needs to join together once more to defeat Merlin, who threatens to take all of magic for his own, leaving everything and everyone decimated in his rise to ultimate power. Reluctantly, everyone joins up together, finding one another, leaving many mysteries still to be uncovered as we see how much time has changed, not just the individual heroes, but the team's dynamic as well. Prophetess is written by Ram V with art by Marcio Takara and colors by Marcello Maialo. Number 4, Outsiders. If you are in need of more badass katana moments, in fact, some of the most badass katana moments, at least in Future State, look no further than The Outsiders. This story is about a team of heroes who band together, who help to get people safely outside of Gotham to a place where they can live freely once more without the magistrate controlling them and their way of life with an iron fist. The team consists of Signal, a reluctant katana, and joining them in issue number 1, Black Lightning. Black Lightning as well is another big reason to read the comic, as he sees a massive power upgrade here and is just a delightful character to read besides. So if you don't want to read it for katana, read it for Black Lightning. Either way, you're not going to be disappointed. Number 3, Midnighter Future State. If you came to Future State, Superman, Worlds of War for some epic fighting, then this story has you covered. It features the often overly violent Midnighter who lives up to his name here, but I would say not in a way that is like overly gratuitous with the violence. The level of violence artistically rendered by Gleb Melnikov here is just right on the mark, in my opinion. It features Midnighter also initially on War World, following the trail led by a mystery digital voice on a mission to save all life on planet Earth, apparently. Pretty epic, right? And just wait till you get the reveal at the end, oh my goodness. And then you're still definitely gonna need to read the next issue. Midnighter is written by Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad with colors by Jordi Belair. Number 2, Nubia in Future State. If this story isn't better, it's at least on the level of the main story, Immortal Wonder Woman, which is also awesome, and it needs to be featured and celebrated here, so that's what we're gonna do. Basically, if there is one takeaway from Future State, it's that Wonder Woman rule, and basically we need all of them to stick around moving forward when we do go back to DC's regularly scheduled programming, Nubia included. For those who are unfamiliar with the character, Nubia was introduced in the comics as Diana's long-lost twin sister, and has played multiple roles in the comics over the years, and over the course of multiple revamps to her character. She's been a hero, an enemy, a competitor, and an ally, and in Future State we are definitely continuing down that hero path for her, which I love. This story, written by L.L. McKinney, features Nubia taking on the villain Grail, with stunning art by Aletha Martinez and Mark Morales, and colors by Emilio Lopez. Seriously, both the stories in that book just look so good. Love it. Basically, get Immortal Wonder Woman. Just get it and read it and love it and keep it forever. Also, who's excited for that Nubia series that's coming out? Because that's the thing that's gonna happen. Number 1, Batgirls. I think this one actually might be my favorite story in general. Batgirls is an awesome story featured in the next Batman, written by Vita Ayala with art by Anique and colors by Trish Mulvihill. In this Future State, we get to catch up with our Batgirls, Cassandra Cain and Stephanie Brown. It's a hard one to talk about because I don't want to ruin the story's intrigue, which for me was a big draw, just catching up with where our Batgirls are and what they have been up to in the future. Batman is believed dead by many, but the Bat family still has hope. Infiltrating the Magistrate's prison facilities, Cassandra Cain is on a mission to find Batman, who she believes is actually being held prisoner somewhere deep inside the facility. However, things get a little heated when she runs into Stephanie Brown, now known as Patch, who went a different route in the wake of Bruce's disappearance.
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Batman Gotham by Gaslight. A Tale of the Batman, written by Brian Augustin and brought to life by Mike Mignola. Comes a tale from the Victorian era where Batman is hunting down Jack the Ripper.
Your evening attire, sir.
That was not the suit. I need Alfred.
So it's 1889, and while these murders of women are happening all over the place, the general public whispers in the wind that it may be Batman who is committing these crimes. Okay, so we got historic serial murders, we got old-timey gangs, Bruce gets framed, the candlelit mystery is afoot. I loved this one shot, honestly. It's really hard to put down as soon as you start. If you have time, at least watch the animated film because you owe it to yourself. A lot of candlelit, which way did he go? It's good, it's right up your alley, you'll love it. And before we go on to number 9, guys, if you could go ahead and toss this video a thumbs up, or else we'll be using candles to light this place up, just like Gotham by Gaslight. And we can't have that. You guys are literally the best, thank you for your support. Number 9, The Doom That Came to Gotham. So written by the lovely Mike Mignola and Hellboy creator Richard Pace, comes a tale taking place in 1928. All these old tales, I love it. So we have Bruce Wayne after he pieced out after the death of his parents. So now, 20 years later, he's returned, and he has to get pretty dark to take out the Lovecraftian horror known as the Lurker on the Threshold. This is a 3-issue miniseries, and it's a dark, weird, fast-paced adventure. I mean, we have demons that come into the plot, like demons, so you should know what you're getting into, especially if you're a fan of Mignola's other work, Gotham by Gaslight, which I mentioned 1 second ago. Number 8, Batman I Joker. This one is a trip. Okay, so we have the Bruce, and he was dumped into a vat of chemicals way back when, and now we see the Bat as the crazy antagonist, which already is super fun. Everybody's all like, all hail the Bruce, hail the God King of Gotham. And he's quite messed up. Yeah, he's like calling out other Gotham citizens, challenging them to kill his enemies before he gets to them himself. It's wild, it's like Mad Max, crazy. And if this isn't wacky enough for you, he wants everybody to challenge him. He wants them to earn the chance to become a god by defeating him in combat. That plus some resurrected villains, it really gets the Hunger Game vibes going. So if you're into some death sport like reading, this is an ideal one-shot. Bob Hall created a quite fun story here.
I swear to God. Swear to me!
And number 7, Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Knights in a Half Shell. Yes, just saying that out loud, I'm like, ooh, let's do it. This comic is so fun. It's written by James Tynion IV. Right off the bat, we see a pizza delivery guy as he drops off the za. And then of course there's a note that says, leave it on the street, and then we see turtle hands creep up out of the sewer. Yep, they come across the Batmobile, and then shortly after, they come across Batman himself. It's a pretty serious take as well. I mean, I know it looks fun because you're like, Ninja Turtles, Batman, sick. Which some fans didn't like how serious it was, but others rejoiced that they could dig their teeth into something after watching the Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated movie. It's a pretty slow start, but once it gets cooking, it's a hell of a lot of fun. The Turtles were transported to Gotham thanks to Krang, alongside their master, Splinter, and of course, archenemy, Shredder. They set up camp in the sewers, of course, but our own Killer Croc stumbles upon them, and then so begins this cat and mouse game with Batman and the Turtles. So Batman finds one of Raphael's sai during a fight, and then Lucius Fox confirms it is from another universe. So the 6-issue series is a pretty short read, but Freddie Williams' art will keep you admiring the pages, taking it much longer than you think. Number 6, Justice Riders. Okay, this one was released back in 1997 by Chuck Dixon, and it's a wild tale of the Wild Wild West. Justice Riders is a one-shot that has the Justice League of America take on different roles. Like Wally West is an outlaw who's blamed for the death of Barry Allen. He's like a young guy too. And then Wonder Woman is the marshal. She's the old marshal in town. The 1873 story begins with Marshal Diana Prince's hometown, Paradise. More like Paradust. Am I right, fellas? And it's destroyed by an alcoholic sorcerer named Felix Faust. So she wrangles up her super squad and hits the dirt, heading for El Inferno to get revenge. Wild West anything is a good time. There's a lot of hat tipping, we got sunsets, we got giant rocks that look like fingers coming out of the ground, and of course we got some badass gun holsters and some hate chewing. There's rules when you read this one shot though. You have to do the accent in your head the entire time, that's it. Do your worst Western accent the entire time. Number 5, JSA, Liberty File. Okay, we got some Wild West hootin' and hollerin', but what about some World War II drama? So JSL Liberty File was written by Tony Harris and Dan Jolly and sees the interception of a parcel in which the contents could change the outcome of the war. And then we got Owl, Clock, and Bat stepping in to save the day. So Jack the Grin, known as the albino smuggler, which is what my friends called me when I would steal their supplies for school, he intercepts a communicate and then hides it, and then starts making bids on it. So this is a two-parter, and it's fairly short, but it doesn't waste any time at all. The stakes are high, like right off the bat. So we have these schematics for a new German long-range bomber in the hands of the Joker, right? It's dark, we got some mysterious men in bowler hats, and they're doing their mysterious men in bowler hat things, smoking and whispering in dark shadows. You already know what you're in for, it's a great time. Number 4, Batman Gotham Noir. Coming from the minds of Ed Brubaker and drawn to life by Sean Phillips comes a pulp comic thriller. A notable difference here opposed to our usual Gotham tale is that it centers around Jim Gordon this time. And he doesn't have the best luck, and he's heavy into the booze. He's a private investigator who gets framed for murder as well. So those are the 3 things you just want in life right there. Fans are actually super excited to see these themes come spiraling down to this perfect crime story. It's dark, it's gritty, and most of all, it's realistic. They made Gotham quite interesting here as well because they didn't shoot necessarily for a superhero theme, right? So Jim Gordon finds himself sharing his life story with the only person that'll listen, not God, the Bat. So now Batman already is a noir character, so I'm glad they put the focus more on Gordon here. It felt fresh. You kind of expect it to go one way, but it doesn't, and that's the best part. Number 3, Superman Speeding Bullets. From J.M. DeMatteis and Eduardo Barreto comes the ultimate question of what would have happened if Superman was discovered by the Waynes of Gotham instead of the Kansas Kents. So right off the hop, we see the usual scenario playing out. We got the alleyway, we got the mugger with the gun, and then when it comes down to the mugger shooting Bruce as well, because he cried and he just hates when kids cry, the bullets don't penetrate his skin. And his wet eyes look up at the mugger, and then those wet eyes turn bright red. Yeah, he zapped the shit out of him. Laser eyes for the win. So this Batman is now angry. It cuts to him being older, and he remembers that he could have saved his parents, and it eats him alive. That plus these Superman abilities that he now has, it makes for a very, very entertaining ride. Number 2, Flashpoint. Okay, so one of the biggest upcoming DC movies, and for good reason, the storyline where the Flash tries to go back in time to save his mother from her tragic death, which is not a bad idea at all. This story was released in 2011, written by Jeff Johns and Andy Kubert, and it starts with Barry waking up with no Flash powers. In fact, the Flash doesn't even exist. In fact, everything has changed. His mother Nora was still alive. Sick. And his father Henry died 3 years prior. Oh. Yeah, so in his own timeline, his dad's actually alive and in jail, but we know this, right? There's no Justice League, and Superman isn't even in the picture. The best part and one plot point that we're most looking forward to in the movie is that Batman in this universe is actually Thomas Wayne, Bruce Wayne's father. So Bruce ended up dying that night, causing his mother Martha to go insane, and then she becomes a Joker. That's why during the opening credits of Batman vs Superman, we were all hyped because we saw Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Lauren Cohen, 2 huge actors in such a small opening scene with 0 dialogue. So everyone's like, huh, that must have been an expensive day to shoot. Yeah, it was. They had bigger plans for them down the future, and now with recent news of Michael Keaton set to return in the Flashpoint movie, Jeffrey Dean Morgan took to the internet and said, Michael Keaton swooped in and took my gig. Now, I think that's super cool. Ever since Zack Snyder walked away, my whole kind of bit in that world has walked away with him. However, there's always a chat going on. There's always a chat. May I peek into this chat, sir? Because we'd love to see that. We've been kind of begging for it. I don't know. It'll be good either way. We'll see. We shall see. I mean, we'll see it June 2nd, 2022. For now, if it's not delayed even more. And finally, number 1, Justice League The Nail. If you own a car, first of all, congrats. Secondly, you must know the pain of getting a flat tire. It's always at the worst times too, right? Well, imagine if a flat tire was the sole reason Lil Kal-El was never found. Yeah, coming from the mind of Alan Davis, we see this unfold and lead the world into a much, much different way of living without Superman. without hope. So now Lex Luthor doesn't have anybody to go toe-to-toe with, so that led to him becoming the beloved mayor of Metropolis. The Justice League are to be feared as well. The world has a lot of hatred towards metahumans and aliens. It's great how the Silver Age heroes also kept their costumes in this as well, because they're a lot of fun in this Elseworlds story. We see Alan Davis revisit big players like the Outsiders and Batman, which he drew in the 80s. So I definitely recommend adding it to the list, and that's why I put it on number 1 of our list.
Number 10, Superman Jr. is no more! Exclamation point. Remember that time that Superman Jr. quit? No? Well, you can if you read this Elseworlds story. This is another Elseworlds story out of the Elseworlds 80-page giant from the 90s. Seriously, this book is chock full of interesting and strange stories. In this one, Superman Jr. ends up quitting the superheroic game, much to Batman Jr.'s dismay, believing his dad will be around forever, so he's not needed. He's like, I quit, I'm over this. My dad's got this for life, for longer than life. I think you know where this is going next. Superman appears to die while taking a net full of dangerous missiles to safety in the emptiness of space to explode in. Supes Jr. then feels terrible, misses his dad, the whole world goes into a tizzy, and eventually Superman Jr. is inspired to return. I don't know if people use the word tizzy anymore, but I just did, so there you go. I'm making it a thing again. He helps Batman Jr. save some guys from an earthquake where they end up being trapped under tons of rock and snow. In the end, however, it's revealed that Superman faked his death in order to influence his son to return to his job as a hero, and everyone has a good laugh about it. Ha 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 ha! Oh, faking your death is such good fun. This story also features such amazing lines as Batguy/Bat Jr. I kid you not, he is called Batguy in this comic, asking Supes Jr. what's the true poop on this? And Superman Jr. responding with a rhyme. Rhyming on your father's grave, Superman Jr.? How distasteful. Number 9, DMT's rockumentary, The Lex Records Story. How about a story where we get the history of how Lex became the head of the most successful record label ever, representing all kinds of superheroic musician talent, and how he ended up selling the label to Darkseid. That is another story which comes to us from the Elseworld 80-page giant, and it is a delight. I promise I'm gonna have other stories that are not from this comic, but just let me get these out of the way, my friends. They're just so good. What a strange story this is. One wherein Superman is part of a superheroic Beetle-like group with Barry Allen, Green Arrow, and Aquaman. Oh, and he's the John Lennon of the group who is tragically killed. And I never knew I needed to see Martian Manhunter as a rock star, but I definitely did need that, and so do you. And before I move on to our number 8, if you are enjoying this list, be sure to let us know and show it by giving this video a thumbs up. It really does help us out here at Top 10 Nerd. Number 8, Superman/Batman. Absolute power! This comic is an interesting one. We are talking about a world in this story arc where Superman and Batman were reimagined as the only heroes. Both of their parents were wiped out at a young age, and Superman was never raised by the Kents. Instead, they were taken in and raised by Saturn Queen, Lightning Lord, and Cosmic King of the Legion of Supervillains. They created a fascist world which they collectively ruled with an iron fist, eliminating any and all opposing heroes who rose up or attempted to do so anyways. If you don't believe me, just look at the end of the first issue in this arc, which ends with Wonder Woman awakening and recruiting Uncle Sam. Yep, that's just how this story do. Number 7, Son of Superman. The 1999 Son of Superman tells a story where John Kent works alongside a group called the Supermen to discover the truth behind what really happened to his father, all as he's realizing just who his father really was, which his mom, Lois Lane, kept a secret, and as he's just realizing himself that he has superpowers. He doesn't even initially realize that Clark Kent and Superman were the same person, but initially instead suspects his mother was having an affair with the costumed hero Superman. Oh boy, John. In the end, they discovered that his father is still alive and had been kidnapped and held prisoner all these years by Lex Luthor with help from Martian Manhunter. Ooh, it does not look good on you, Martian Manhunter. It's not very nice. In the end, this plot is revealed, and despite John being new to heroics, he goes up against Lex, and the good guys end up prevailing. My favorite part, admittedly, is when John calls Lex's ponytail outdated. So 90s. Just gotta love that. Also, I just love that Lex has a ponytail in this. I also just love that this story ends with most of the older crew of Supes retiring, paving the way for a new era of supers like John himself. For me, Elseworld stories that end like this, I'm like, I wish this could be the way of DC. Just let some of these people retire. Let's get some fresh blood in here. We've got a lot of sons and daughters and such. Number 6. Batman in Darkest Night. All my tales of the dark multiverse fans out there are likely already familiar with this story, if not the original telling of it, then at least the dark retelling of it. You might know the version of Bruce Wayne from Earth -32, but for this multiverse story we're talking about the version of Bruce that inspired him from the non-dark Earth, just Earth 32, no negatives needed. This version of Bruce is introduced to us in Batman in Darkest Night, a 90s comic that gave us an alternate story, one where Bruce Wayne, instead of becoming Batman, becomes the Green Lantern in Hal Jordan's place, being chosen by Abin Sur instead. In this reality, Sinestro becomes Green Lantern, Bruce Wayne's biggest foe, and the Joker never existed, as Green Lantern prevents the accident which created him at Ace Chemicals. Here, Catwoman is also Star Sapphire, which I honestly just need more artwork in my life of that whole thing. I'm just like, more Catwoman Star Sapphire artwork, please. Give it to me. Number 5. Batman / Captain America. This has got to be one of my favorite stories out there. It's the team up we've all been waiting for, Batman and Captain America together. I actually love when these two team up. Here we see them taking on each other's main nemesis, featuring Cap's Red Skull and Bat's Joker. There is also a bit of a sidekick swap where Cap partners with Robin and Batman partners with Bucky, and in the end, of course, even Joker admits that Red Skull is so evil, even he is not interested in working with him. He may be a criminal lunatic, but he is an American criminal lunatic. When it comes to German World War II soldiers, even Joker isn't interested in crossing that line. And in the end, he and Red Skull end up squaring off themselves and fighting one another as well, after Joker finds out Red Skull's true allegiance. I just love the Joker's like, I might be crazy, but like, this is too crazy for me. Not about that. Number 4. Batman / Houdini, The Devil's Workshop. For all my Gotham by Gaslight fans out there, here's another stylistically appealing Elseworlds story for you. This one evokes the feel of watercolors and also has some really pretty letters. It's really pretty to look at and features Batman teaming up with Houdini to fight vampires. What more could you want, I ask you? It also gives us a cool alternate Joker with Mad Jack Schadenfreude. The art is truly so good here, I must share with you the names responsible. Howard Chaykin and John Francis Moore are the writers, with art by Mark Chiarello and letters by Ken Bruzenak. Just a stunning read. You gotta check it out. Number 3. DC The New Frontier. Not only is this a beautiful world to get lost in, it is super stylized by the late and great Darwin Cook, who passed away in 2016. This Elseworlds story paints our heroes as outlaws operating in the post-Korean War time period, where space is truly the new frontier. And being that it is, the story here is primarily led by protagonists and heroes Martian Manhunter and Hal Jordan. Also, I just gotta say, I love when Martian Manhunter gets to be like the main protagonist in a story. I feel like we don't hear enough from him usually. Maybe I just need to read more of his standalone series. Maybe that's what I need to do. The art style is simple and classic, and I also just really love the explosive use of color as well. It's a visually compelling series that I highly recommend checking out. Number 2. Earth 2. Earth 2 is home to many awesome heroes like Val-Zod, Superman, Power Girl, and Helena Wayne's Huntress. It is home to the superhero team known as the Wonders of the World, and while some of the original team is gone, we are introduced to new team members who take their place. And hey, we still got the golden oldie Alan Scott. I personally am just a big fan of both Power Girl and Helena Wayne and their team ups together, so Earth 2 for me, when it comes to alternate realities and worlds and their stories, has got to be one of my favorites personally. Number 1. Kingdom Come. Kingdom Come has to be one of the most beautiful Elseworlds stories that takes us to an alternate future where there is a great divide and sort of war in the superhero community, following Superman's choice to retire. He does end up returning to the world of heroics at the behest of Diana, aka Wonder Woman. Kingdom Come was a story originally written by Mark Waid in response to a rise of anti-heroes in the comic world. And in the story, this is exactly what you see some of the classic heroes like Superman, Wonder Woman, and Alan Scott go up against. These new heroes whose ideologies are much more harsh and violent by comparison. Much more edgy. The artwork, of course, is done by one of the most amazing artists to this day in the biz, Alex Ross, and is all hand painted. We also get to end it with, of course, Superman and Diana becoming parents of like a cool baby, and then also they're like, hey Batman, you wanna also help us raise this super baby? I just love that. I love the three of them like parenting together. I think that's adorable. Number 10, the reaching hand. The amount of bizarre deaths Jimmy Olsen has to suffer in alternate realities, my goodness. In this story featured in the Elseworlds 80-page giant from 1999, we see Bruce Wayne acting as a Lovecraftian detective aiming to unravel the mystery that is the alleged murder of Elongated Man. In reality, something far more dark and sinister has taken hold of the hero and is using him as its vessel to spread darkness throughout the city and take hold of other innocent souls. It reminds me a bit of the bizarre and campy 90s film Cast a Deadly Spell. Like most Lovecraft-inspired horror stories, this one ends with a foreboding cliffhanger. That face. I love that face. Bruce Wayne's face at the end, he's like, oh, what will happen? You're dead. You're gonna die. It's not gonna be good. Number 9. Teen Titans The Lost Annual. This strange story has a campy 60s feel to it. It was originally slated to be released in the early 2000s as an Elseworlds special for Teen Titans, but was later delayed. In the end, it was released in 2008, where it would be referred to in the title as a Lost Annual. But originally, it was intended to be an Elseworlds special, so I'm gonna count it. Here, the Teen Titans team up to try and save President John F. Kennedy, who has been kidnapped by space aliens and replaced by some kind of double. The whole adventure is pretty wacky, which honestly is what makes it so enjoyable. You know me, I love wacky adventures. Reminds me a bit of an original series Star Trek episode. And in case you haven't gathered by now, TOS is my favorite of the Star Treks, so yes. Although I am finally watching Discovery now, so I guess we'll see what happens. And before we move on to our number 8 spot, a quick thank you to all of you for joining me this list, and a reminder to click that like if you want more videos like this one. I personally love exploring Elseworlds with you, so I'd love to do more about it. Number 8, Elseworlds' finest, Supergirl and Batgirl. This one is kinda ridiculous, but also has some pretty powerful and epic moments. In this Elseworlds story, both Superman and Batman do not exist. Kal-El was destroyed before he could become Superman, though Kara Zor-El still made it to Earth. She took his place as Metropolis's hero, becoming Supergirl. Bruce Wayne never became Batman either, and instead Barbara Gordon guards Gotham as Batgirl, after her parents were murdered by accident instead of the Waynes, who were meant to be targeted. The two women join forces and take on a very sneaky Lex Luthor, who Supergirl had thought of as a close friend and ally initially, and a very jacked Joker. He's like really jacked, like more jacked than you could probably imagine. He's also wearing like a little gym outfit, which is just something. Number 7, A Nation Divided. This Elseworld comic, Superman: A Nation Divided, gives us a look at what Superman would be like if he was around during the Civil War and happened to be a Union soldier. In this story, Superman is known as Atticus Kent and ends up finding out he has superpowers during the Civil War. He quickly becomes the Union's new secret weapon and even takes both Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln on a little flight to give them a tour of the Capitol. I personally love when history and comics meld, and Elseworld stories that posit what if superheroes were real and part of historical events. So for me, this was an interesting story and one that I enjoyed. The whole story is told through letters of various historical figures as well as Kent himself. Number 6, Thrill Killer. Set in the 60s, this Elseworld stories follows a doomed Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson, aka Richard Graystark, which is his actual name here, although he still goes by Dick Grayson because comics. These two attempt to take on the Joker, who in this world is a woman known as Bianca Steeplechase. In the end, Robin is killed, but so seemingly is the Joker. Oddly enough, in this reality, it's actually Batwoman and Robin who end up inspiring Bruce Wayne to join them. He becomes Batman after Dick's demise. Barbara is also the one with the wealth in this Elseworld story. She is an heiress who became somewhat estranged from her father after the unsolvable murder of her mother. Barbara uses her wealth to purchase Wayne Manor, as in this reality, the Waynes actually lost their fortune during the Great Depression. Very period of them. Very period to lose all of your money during the Great Depression. Or now, during the Now Depression. Number 5, Red Rain. Red Rain has to be one of my all-time favorite Elseworlds tales. It also was an ongoing story that was told over the course of multiple graphic novels released throughout the 90s. In this story, Batman battles vampires but eventually succumbs to them when he is bitten and transformed himself into one of the creatures of the night. He still battles with his new monstrous nature, however, attempting to rebel against it. However, eventually the Joker pushes him too far, causing him to give into temptation and drink his foe's blood. I also like how this is rebel. This is like get off my lawn, kids. I don't know why I do this when I say rebel. Batman attempts to make sure the Joker will never rise again as a vampire, but eventually it is revealed that he was somehow unsuccessful in preventing this from happening when we revisit this alternate Earth much later down the road. Fans of vampires are sure to also enjoy this world, but as a Batman fan, I also just love the extra layer of moral struggle that vampirism gives Batman. Number 4. Earth 3. Earth 3 is home to the Crime Syndicate, an alternate reality where instead of the Justice League members being heroes, they're villains, and instead of the Justice League, we have the Crime Syndicate. In the place of Wonder Woman on the team, we have Superwoman, an evil version of Lois Lane armed with her lasso of submission. Although I always like to think of it as a whip of submission, but that's something else. You guys can cut that. That might be too kinky. I don't know. I don't know if it's too kinky. You tell me. Internet, you tell me. The heroes of this alternate Earth favor strength above all, and as such only seek to dominate and rule those who they consider to be weaker than them. The Crime Syndicate themselves are composed of members Deathstorm, Owlman, Superwoman, and Ultraman currently, but evil versions of Aquaman, known on this alternate Earth as Sea King, and the Flash, known here as Johnny Quick, were also part of the team at a time. I miss Johnny Quick. R.I.P. Johnny Quick. You dead. Number 3. Elseworlds' Finest. I mostly love this story for the art, to be honest. Elseworlds' Finest is quite different from the previous story we had with no Superman or Batman, with Supergirl and Batgirl respectively taking their place. This title of this story and two-part limited series was initially based on the old comic series World's Finest, which featured the two heroes of Superman and Batman teaming up on the regular. Basically, it's their long-lasting BFF comic. In Elseworlds' Finest, we see the heroes team up to go on an Indiana Jones style adventure, with Bruce rocking some pretty sweet supernatural and mystical armor. The two must work together to face an evil Russian Lex and defeat the villainous Ra's al Ghul in order to save the world and free Lana Lang's father. Number 2. Red Sun. One of the most intriguing Elseworlds when it comes to Superman, and in my opinion Lex Luthor, for any Lex fans out there, is Red Sun. Red Sun comes to us from the Elseworlds imprint and aims to answer the question, what if Superman had been raised in the Soviet Union? The result is we get a passionate communist Superman who, instead of standing for truth, justice, and the American way, stands for socialism, Stalin, and acts as a champion of the common worker. Instead of an S on his chest, he wears the symbol of communism, the hammer and sickle. Red Sun was a story written by Mark Miller, which offered us a different look at Lex Luthor as well, who became the president and sort of the hero of the USA, all as a part of his greater plan to satiate his obsession with destroying Superman. So in a weird way, Lex becomes sort of part hero as well as the recognizable part paranoid villain that we've all come to know and love. Number 1. Earth 1. Also known as Earth 1 with the number instead of the letters, so Earth 1 or Earth 1. But it's also confusing because there's multiple Earth 1s. When it comes to some of the DC multiverse, it can actually just get a little confusing in general, as of course there are various Earths that have the same number depending on the continuity we're talking about, New Earth or Prime Earth, not to be confused as well with Earth Prime. Yeah, it can get pretty mathy up in your brain if you're trying to keep track of everything and separate it. But this time around, when I'm talking about alternate Earths when it comes to the number 1, I'm talking about Earth 1, where all of our heroes are just starting out as seen in the Earth 1 series, like Batman Earth 1, Superman Earth 1, Wonder Woman Earth 1. You get the idea. There's a lot of Earth 1s. I like how I didn't talk about it was interesting at all, I just talked about how it was confusing. Anyways, if you've read Earth 1 or any of those series, you know what I'm talking about. It's awesome. Enough said, apparently. So many amazing Elseworlds, and we really only scratched the surface. Currently, we have less going on in terms of other alternate Earths due to DC trying to rein in the expansiveness of the multiverse with the creation of New 52. However, while some of these worlds may no longer exist in current continuity, they still live on in our hearts and in our minds. Number 10. Grim Knight. The origin story of the Grim Knight is similar to the Batman of Prime Earth, but is warped. Instead of the Dark Knight, we know him as the Grim Knight, because this Batman is not afraid to use guns. So yes, you could say he's similar to the OG Batman from the 40s, but he is also far more brutal and ruthless. This version of Batman ended up killing Joe Chill when he was just a child. After Chill shot his parents, he stumbled away in the darkness, but Chill tripped and dropped his gun, and Martha Wayne's Wayne's necklace. While he searched for the necklace in the dark, a young Bruce grabbed the gun and aimed it at Chill, killing him in cold blood with tears in his eyes. This set Bruce down the path of believing that killing was the best way to deal with criminals that opposed justice. This version of Bruce was still inspired by a bat crashing through his window to become Batman, but he also shot that bat when it did. Number 9. Death of Superman. After Superman dies at the hands of Doomsday, Lois becomes depressed and jaded, believing that the world failed Clark. She ends up merging with the Eradicator, who claims it failed in its mission to resurrect the fallen Superman, and instead bonds with Lois so that she can succeed where she believes other heroes have failed, fighting on in Clark's name. However, Lois goes too far compared to Superman, killing those who oppose her, villains and heroes alike. Superman returns, but only lives long enough to express his disappointment and disgust in what Lois Lane has become before he is killed by Cyborg Superman. Super depressing story. Number 8. The Merciless. Like the Earth-12 belonging to the non-dark multiverse, on Earth-12, Batman and Wonder Woman are also in a romantic relationship together. They fight side by side in a war that threatens to engulf the entire population of Earth against the god of war, Ares. After countless have died and they're basically the only two left standing, they finally succeed, but Batman feels in order to protect the world, he should be the one to wield Ares' power. Knowing that Wonder Woman herself would not take Ares' helmet and with it his power, and that she would actually not allow Bruce to take it for fear of it corrupting him, Batman sees no other choice but to kill Diana. He takes Ares' helmet for himself and fights on, claiming to fight in honor and in memory of the fallen warrior and his love, Wonder Woman. Number 7. Blackest Night. This is a wild story wherein Sinestro never shared the powers of the White Lantern. Here, Necron, who speaks through Darkseid, attempts to obliterate the entire universe. Sinestro is both Black and White Lantern, known as the Limbo Lantern, and sees only one way to save the universe, by creating a new universe in Dove's image, by plugging her into the source. This almost works, except at the last minute their ally, Mr. Miracle's conviction wavers, and he ends up killing Dove to avoid creating and living in a world without his wife Barda. Instead, Sinestro is forced to use the only teammate he has left, Lobo, to create a new universe. Yeah. Slim pickings, I guess. The world instead is made in Lobo's image, who taps into the source, eliminating all Black Lanterns and restarting a dark and more grotesque looking world which Sinestro remains trapped in, unable to leave due to Tempest preventing him from doing so. That sucks. Number 6. The Devastator. The Devastator is another twisted version of Bruce Wayne who was pushed too far. For mysterious reasons that remain unknown, the Superman of the Devastator's dark universe randomly underwent a change that caused him to go on a full-out rampage, killing everyone. Batman was one of the last few left to try and stop him, attempting to do so with a kryptonite spear. After Superman blasts off Batman's arm, however, he is driven to desperate measures. Batman is forced to activate his own version of the Doomsday virus, which takes over his body and transforms him into a Doomsday-like creature, becoming the Devastator. Although he fails in saving his world, he succeeds in killing the Superman of his universe, before heading out to try and save other alternate Earths by infecting them with the virus in order to protect them from their world Superman. Although, you know, they never really asked for that, so it's pretty horrifying. Number 5. Infinite Crisis. In the dark multiverse, Ted Kord is not killed by Maxwell Lord. Instead, Ted pretends to agree to join Lord in cleaning house when it comes to his plans for Checkmate, but he betrays Lord and kills him. Brother Eye threatens to push on with the OMAC project, but Kord offers that he could help to guide Brother Eye and take Maxwell Lord's place, help Brother Eye save and protect the planet as Lord had promised Brother would. Ted ends up attempting to recruit Booster Gold to help him with Brother Eye, but Booster isn't so sure about his friend's plan. In the end, he teams up with Superboy Prime, who has been plotting with Alexander Luthor of Earth 3 to create a perfect world in the main continuity, but Luthor betrays him. Superboy and Blue Beetle, who's now directly connected to the Brother Eye, end up teaming up. They end up attempting to take out 50% of Earth's superhero population as recommended by Brother Eye, but in the end they're forced to eliminate or assimilate all of the superhero populace, who obviously are like, no, you can't just kill us, with Ted Kord sacrificing his humanity in order to completely demolish all of that superhero threat. Number 4. The Murder Machine. After the death of Alfred, Batman in his grief seeks to create an AI in Alfred's image and employs the help of Cyborg. Bruce calls the project the Alfred Protocol. Alfred Protocol is also programmed to act as Bruce's infallible bodyguard, and it's this programming which causes everything to go sideways. The Alfred Protocol spreads, taking out every villain, every criminal he deems a threat to Bruce Wayne's life. However, it doesn't end there. The Alfred Protocol also realizes in order to protect Bruce, it also needs to change him, protect him from himself and his emotions by eradicating them, starting with his fear. This change infects and transforms Batman into a cyborg version of himself known as the Murder Machine, who then goes about killing everyone, determining that everyone and his attachment to them is a weakness. Number 3. The Batman Who Laughs. This dark multiverse story was so terrifying it got its own series. The Batman Who Laughs actually got a miniseries to explain just how his story went down. By now we all should mostly know it, but if you haven't read it, it's chilling and thrilling and it's definitely worth a read. In the story, it's explained how Batman became corrupted by Joker venom when he ended up losing control and killing the Joker, triggered by being forced to watch the Joker kill children's parents in front of them before exposing them to Joker venom and driving them insane. When Batman killed Joker, this exposed him to Joker venom, which was released with the Joker's dying breath from his heart. Batman was then driven insane by the venom, becoming a warped Joker-Batman hybrid, and set out killing everyone, even the members of the Bat family, only allowing Damian Wayne to be converted with the venom and join him. He also later confessed that Alfred was one of the last people to try and stop him by blowing him up, but he managed to thwart and capture Alfred and break him, turning him into his own loyal servant once more. Number 2. The Judas Contract. So as bad as the Judas Contract storyline in the main continuity was for the Teen Titans, apparently its consequences could have been a lot more horrific and a lot worse. In this story, Tara finds herself inspired to become her own murderous villain all her own after one of Dick Grayson's inspirational chats. Great job, Dick. Grayson thinks that he's inspired Tara to become her own person separate from Geoforce's shadow though, not Deathstroke's shadow, as he does not know yet that Tara is actually a spy. She ends up unlocking her potential as a result, becoming more powerful than ever, taking up the name Gaia. She not only tears Slade Wilson apart, literally, but she kills the entire team of Teen Titans, even poor Beast Boy, no! And she also kills the entire Justice League. Number 1. Nightfall. If you haven't read the Tales from the Dark Multiverse, you obviously need to, as they are all pretty crazy, and honestly, the scariest tale can be found in this first one issue. This is a spooky retelling of the Batman story Nightfall. When Bruce has his back broken, he passes the mantle of Batman onto Jean-Paul Valley, aka Azrael. But when he returns, Azrael refuses to give up the mantle. Instead of Bruce Wayne and the Bat family winning it back as they did in the main continuity, this time around Bruce fails. He instead is held captive and tortured for 30 years by Azrael, who rules Gotham with a bloody and merciless iron fist as Saint Batman. Bruce eventually escapes with the help of Bane's son, Torn, and his mother, Lady Shiva. But his time in imprisonment, where he was slowly dissected, has changed Bruce, and no longer is he the man and hero we once knew. Thank you so much for watching, Nerd Squad. What are some of your favorite alternate Earths from the Dark Multiverse?